Yeah, Alan.
Yeah, I think when Tagore was making the point when Daniel says, how long before these things shall be? And times and half a time is the 1260. So he was counting in between events from the end of the age. From the other marker in time was at the time of the New Testament church. So the 1260 in Daniel would, at least in that place, would be representative of that entire period of time from Pentecost, let's say, until the return of Christ, roughly speaking.
Yeah, roughly speaking. Yeah, that's correct.
I think I'm trying to answer Marlene's question about where it would be,
Yeah,
an
sure.
indicator of that span of time.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Um,
A lot to absorb here.
I'd like to go back to Revelation 12 for a second, but before we do, have you ever thought much about the mother of Christ and the correlation of Mary, the Virgin, to Revelation 12, 1 and 2? Have you thought much about that? I'm going to read Luke chapter 1.
Sure, go ahead. Would you like to share? That would be helpful for people.
I can try to do that. Yeah. Let me let's see, Luke. I'm going to go to 27 here. I want to compare this to Revelation 12. So Gabriel comes to Nazareth and talks to Mary, to a virgin, this is verse 27, espoused to a man named Joseph of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary. And the angel came in unto her and said, Hail, thou that art highly favored.
Mm-hmm.
So let's put highly favored in the envelope for a moment, or in the box.
Okay.
The Lord is with you. Okay, that's another element. And blessed art you among women. So there's three things here: highly favored, the Lord is with you, blessed art thou among women. Remember, we're going to go back to Revelation 12 and compare this to that woman who gave birth. When she saw him, she was troubled at his saying, and cast in her mind what manner of salutation this should be. And the angel said, Don't be afraid. I'll put that one in the box with the others.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. You shall conceive in your womb. Okay, now let's jump over to Revelation 12.
You have another tab, right side? Yeah. Okay.
So this woman who is highly favored, and God is with you, and don't be afraid, Mary, don't be afraid, is a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet. And upon her head a crown of 12 stars. She, being with child, cried out, travailing in birth and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven. Behold, a great dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, Mary, which was ready to give birth to Christ. And he stood before her to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, we remember that they tried to kill all the babies,
Right, that's right.
2 years old and under.
Mhm.
And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. Her child was caught up to God. So we're making quantum leaps in time here.
Correct.
The baby's born and the baby is resurrected from the dead as an adult male, the Messiah himself,
Yeah.
caught up to his throne.
Mhm.
So I'm just trying to see if there's any correlation at all between this woman who is highly favored, who's a virgin, who is highly favored, and God is with her, and don't be afraid. The church is highly favored. What I mean by that is the spiritual body of the faithful, the truly faithful. And you could say the same things about the church, right? You could say that the church is highly favored. What do we say the word favored is? Grace, right?
Mhm.
One of the words anyway, that there's grace given to the church. And the Lord is with thee,
Yeah.
church, the holy temple. And blessed art thou, my people, the faithful remnant,
Mhm.
among all the others. This is art thou among women, among all the other women. But blessed art thou, holy body of believers, among all other bodies.
Mhm.
Then he says here, don't be afraid. How many times has he told the church, be not afraid? When Christ said, see that you be not afraid, for all these things must come to pass. That's in the Olivet prophecy.
Yeah.
And then he says it again in, I think it was in John 14, was it? Don't be afraid. So over and over again, we see these parallels. And tonight, it just occurred to me that the things spoken to Mary apply to the Revelation 12.
Yeah, those three phrases I see right away. They applied to the New Jerusalem.
So in years past, I believe we neglected to really focus in on the events surrounding the Virgin because it seemed so Catholic and it seemed so Protestant, and it just seemed like for some reason it got avoided.
Mm.
But look at the elements that are in it that really enrich other parts of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
All right, maybe I said too much.
She was a literal physical mother of Yeshua Jesus, right? So she has some illusions. She's like a type and shadow. She has some shadows of New Jerusalem in her, in these descriptions.
Yeah. I just never really looked at it before.
Yeah, me too. Maybe we should spend a little bit more time on these things, which traditionally WCG avoided.
Those are good parallels, yes.
I don't know, maybe there's even more if you look in Matthew's account.
Yeah. I think Luke has good description too. He's more detailed around the birth.
It kind of makes you wonder, maybe there was no one else, there was no other virgin in Israel at the time that was a suitable woman who would have been an appropriate mother to birth the Savior. So she was so highly favored because of all the people that could have been selected, she was the one.
Yeah. And
And it makes you wonder, Jeremiah was groomed from the time he was in his mother's womb to be that man. It talks in the first chapter of Jeremiah how he was kind of predestined to be that prophet. I wonder if Mary was also groomed, brought into the world, and brought up in such conditions where she was groomed to be this virgin birth mother, so that it would be the perfect woman for this purpose. It doesn't say that. I don't see it in the scriptures. At least I haven't seen it, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
How about Proverbs 31? That's a good parallel.
that's a good parable, yes. Parallel, I agree. Proverbs 31. You have more types and shadows of New Jerusalem than you ever thought, sprinkled across the scriptures.
Yeah.
Could you pull up Proverbs 31, Helen? And let's see if
Sure.
there's some good parallels there
Hmm.
on a spiritual level.
Probably from verse 10.
Virtuous. This word virtuous, I think, is standard definition means moral goodness.
Yeah.
So this woman would be considered upright, virtuous, meaning she's a good person, morally sound, and has a reputation for excellence.
You want to go through these verses so that we get refreshed, Alan?
It's a long way down to 31, but what do you want to do here? Do you want to
Yeah, just read through.
exegete every line?
Or just go through them, or you can just read them.
Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. What I was saying earlier about that one woman had to be found that was a suitable and appropriate woman to birth Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
So who could possibly find that woman? Only the Father could find that one.
Mm-hmm.
It was up to the Father to determine who's going to do this, who's going to hold this special assignment, this place of extreme privilege.
Mm-hmm.
So who can find a virtuous woman like Mary, whose price is far above the rubies? Well, the Father, that's who can find it.
Now, if you restrict discussion to the physical woman Mary, then you have problems. At one point, Jesus has to rebuke her. And
Oh, sure.
at points, she almost forgot what Gabriel told her. And she is like normal human being, normal human woman with her own issues. That's probably the reason we did not elevate her, but Catholics elevated her probably for a different reason, because they want to demote Christ. But allegorically, yes, if we say this about New Jerusalem, that is yes. The whole shadows are pointing to New Jerusalem, right?
Yeah, far above rubies. So New Jerusalem being composed of many gemstones,
Yeah.
the foundations.
Yeah.
It's much better than just rubies.
Mhm.
Well, we find in other places too, even in Job 28, it talks about how wisdom itself is better than rubies,
Correct.
better than gemstone. So there's a lot just in this verse comparing rubies to other things that are better. The heart of her husband does safely trust in her. Well, that's something to think about.
Mm.
Trust between you and your Savior, and your ability to trust Him, to follow through with what He said He's going to do. First of all, do you trust Him? Do you trust that the blood of the sacrifice was good enough to wash away your sin, to make atonement for you? The heart of her husband does safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil.
Is it King James?
Yeah.
Hmm.
What do you want? You want Young's literal?
No. That's fine. That's fine. King James is fine.
This is Young's literal here.
I think I would stick to King James and fix any translation issues.
Yeah, this is King James here.
Mm. Yeah.
So this need of spoil, what do you see here? He has no need of spoil.
Yeah. I mean, she wouldn't commit any debauchery or adultery or harlotry. He trusts her safely because she is so faithful and loyal to him. Probably he doesn't need to chastise or not worried about that.
I took it more to mean like the spoils of war. Like he doesn't have to go out and bring home the spoils of war, because he trusts her. She's able to produce the abundance that's needed in the household.
Okay. Yeah, that also makes sense. Yeah.
This is such a highly respectable and honorable position to have. And she will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. So this is someone who at the end of her life has shown that she was able to complete it to the end. She stays faithful.
Mm-hmm.
And never fails to do those things that she knows is right. So who does that? You know anyone who's like that? And what is the relationship here in this section between this woman, this virtuous woman, and the husband? Who is the husband? Is that Christ?
Obviously, Christ.
So we hope that we are one who is among the spiritual body that will do him good and never evil, all the way to the end of our life.
Mm-hmm.
What a legacy to leave. Many have done that. Those who died in faith, who, in spite of the mistakes they made, she seeks wool and flax and works willingly with her hands. This is what we see as clothing, right? We make clothing with those materials.
Yeah.
And what are we clothed with? We work hard that we be clothed with righteousness.
Exactly. Perfect.
And she's like a merchant ship, brings her food from afar. What do we see here?
That's a loaded verse. How far she
Well,
goes to get that food?
She doesn't settle just for the mundane or the boring, so to speak. When people bring exotic foods from faraway lands, they're highly sought after and they're very valuable.
Mhm.
Such as in the days of old when the spice routes
Mhm.
went from the east. So what does this mean for us spiritually?
For the truth, your food is manna, true manna. For truth, she goes to any extent. She listens to any teacher that is really teaching something. She doesn't care what their denomination is, where they are located, and what they are doing. If they are feeding, she will go and get the food from afar off. What all matters to her is food, just like merchant ships. That's how I see.
Yeah, I see that she spends a lot of additional energy
Yeah,
to make sure that what she's bringing in to sustain and to bring good nutrition, spiritual nutrition.
yeah. For her,
You spend a lot of energy and time in doing that
yeah.
for the family, for others, that others benefit from it.
Mhm. I'm asking others also can put their insight, like we're doing it together. If you see another point, please add.
When you said this one about going afar, I thought sometimes we travel a long way for the nourishment from the feast gatherings.
Oh, yeah.
That's one way.
Mhm. Or we get our connection, our wireless connection in prayer. That's a long way off, too.
Now, one thing we see, she's not lazy.
No, she's
like
very
ants.
resourceful.
Hmm.
So do you think the church should be resourceful, the spiritual body?
Mhm.
In what way would our being resourceful help? Look how resourceful the apostles had to be. How beautiful were the feet upon the mountains, those who bring the gospel.
Mhm.
She rises also while it is yet night, gives meat to her household, and a portion for her maidens. So this follows the previous verse about the food coming from afar.
Yeah.
So these two verses really should be blended together. Providing meat in due season. And you could even say meat. There's meat that is for sacrifices. I've been doing some study on the sacrificial system.
Mhm.
And one of the things that's kind of surprising is the people were to be partakers of eating some of the sacrifices. Not all of them,
Mhm.
not the sin sacrifice or the burnt sacrifice, but the peace offering. The individual who brings the peace offering, his family is to eat the greatest portion of it.
Mhm.
Which, what does it tell you? You're taking in that which was sacrificed. The sacrifice. So this whole thing about gives meat to her household and a portion to her maidens. She's providing that thing that keeps them vibrant and energized.
Mhm.
She considers a field. Now this launches us into a whole area of economics.
She's also a businesswoman.
This is a very, very broad application. When we talk about aspects of economics and what being able to use money properly, such as those who have plenty of riches and are able to use those riches in a righteous way, according to the instruction of Christ. Very difficult. This is like a very, very high level, difficulty level. Now, you know how when you see a game, you can play a chess game, and it's got several different levels of difficulty? This is maximum difficulty here because everything about the flesh is appealed to in material riches. So on the physical level, if she considers a field, buys it with the fruit of her hands and plants a vineyard in it, she's investing. This investing is so that the return can be given to others to benefit them, to provide for others, that she can also sell from the vineyard and generate wealth so that people can be served. Not for self-service, not for selfish use. But if you live in a land of milk and honey and you generate lots of milk and lots of honey, what should you do with that? Build bigger barns? The warnings are there. Don't build a bigger barn. Use it in such a way that your Father would be very pleased. So in this case, she, the body of believers, is investing in those things that would generate an increase, such as the parable of the pounds or the minas. Any comments on that, on the consideration of the economics or the providing or investing for others? That's a pretty broad topic.
I'm seeing planting the seeds of the gospel message.
Okay. So when she considers the field, what is she doing?
Where is she going to share the gospel? You know,
She's evaluating the soil.
right.
And when she finds one that's appropriate, she makes the investment and buys it.
Spends her time with the person.
Buying is exchange, whatever. You're spending time, yeah. That's a good way.
Yeah, there's a lot in that verse.
She's also taking action. There's things things that she's doing
That's
that are
right.
producing things.
Is that what the ideal church would do? Absolutely.
He says when he returns that he will find us so doing, not just waiting, but very busy.
Right. Next, verse 17 says, she girds her loins with strength and strengthens her arms. How do we translate that over to spiritual work? You know, Peter says in 1 Peter, gird up the loins of your mind. Remember that verse?
Yeah.
Which means, of course, get your head on straight, your spiritual acuity. Get yourself in order spiritually is what Peter is saying.
Well, that's what we were saying earlier, that we have to build our spiritual strength.
Right.
Very important.
But here it's loins and arms. So arms are, why would we need strong arms? Why would we need to maintain the strength of our arms? That's our works. Our arms have our hands.
Mhm. Ephesians 6 says, gird your loins with truth.
Yeah, armor of God.
Mhm.
So it's loins and arms here. It's not a focus in one area. And that's what the church ought to do, right? Try to maintain strength in various areas in the body.
Mhm.
Not just focused on one, because then the other one gets weak. And all the members all need to be striving to keep themselves strong.
Mhm.
She perceives that her merchandise is good. So she's able to discern and evaluate her merchandise
Mhm.
and recognize the great value that's in it. What kind of merchandise are we talking about? Earlier, she was making wool and flax garments. Then she's bringing food from far away. That's merchandise, but it looks like this vineyard that she planted is really pretty important when producing merchandise. You're going to have these grapes that are, what would you say the grape is a representation of?
So fruit.
Yeah.
So you can produce nice sweet grapes or wild grapes. Wild grapes are thrown into the wrath of God's wine press. But the good grapes would produce high quality wine. The wine again is a symbol of teaching.
And this was always done at the fall harvest. The grapes always come at the fall harvest.
Mhm.
And that's the celebration at the feast of Tabernacles. But she perceives her merchandise is good and knows it's valuable.
Mhm.
And her candle does not go out by night. So she puts in long hours. The church works day and night. There's a verse in Revelation somewhere about day and night. What is that verse? Crying day and night?
Devil accuses day and night.
Yeah, but there's something about the spiritual aspect of day and night.
Oh, there's a lot more.
Yeah.
Actually, we can substitute candle with a lamp. That's a bad translation.
The lamp goes out not by night, not out by night. Yeah. So why would your candle burn up at night? You know, today we have a phrase, you're burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
To remind people that, hey, you know, you're working too much. You're doing, you're going to run yourself down. But she doesn't because she's not lazy.
Yeah, it brings us to the parable of 10 virgins. The lamp goes out by night or goes not out. She's one of the 5 wise virgins.
Yep. That's a really good fit for that one. So now we're talking about a spindle. She lays her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. Let's see what that says in the New King James. I don't know what distaff means. Let's see what this one says. Staff with the flax, the spinning rod. So it's talking about a sewing machine, a kind of a weaving machine.
Yeah, they
she
make
she
cloth.
she labors at. Go ahead.
I think it's she makes cloth. She runs threads in X direction and Y direction.
Yeah. So maybe that's part of what she does at night. Why her candle's not out at night. We're producing, and you know how it is, Tagore. Sometimes at night, your mind is racing with various sections of scripture, and you're laboring in the word to try to get a better grasp of some very, very rich and meaningful concepts.
Mhm.
So we labor at night, and the Christian man and woman who are in the new covenant, they labor at night, meditating on the word and trying to formulate things that could be spoken that would be edification to others.
Mhm.
She stretched out her hand to the poor. Yes, she stretched forth her hands to the needy.
Mhm.
That's like one of those proverbs that repeats itself, like I forget what they call that, a parallel. How do we interpret this spiritually? What do you mean that I should stretch out my spiritual hand to the poor? Does that mean when people lack spiritual understanding, that if I am able to, I should try to help?
That's exactly like you can read this entire chapter literally and physically. That makes sense. But you can read it entirely spiritually. I think that's what God intended. So it's not just poor financially or economically, poor in spirit. They're willing to learn God's way. They're willing to listen. They want to be fed. They want to know more about God. So for that, she extends her hand and she reaches forth her hands to the needy. Whoever in need.
The ideal body of believers would do this, and they did do it. I mean, if you go back and look at the book of Acts, and you see various ones going out and attempting to make progress, and then after a while, Paul comes out and he goes out to Asia. So it's quite a thing to think about that today. This is what you and I ought to be doing.
That's true. Like we don't tell them first to wear suit and tie. Then we will see. And then you have to come and follow our rules. She's not doing that. She's
No.
stretching her hand to the needy.
Yeah, she's meeting them where they're at and giving them something of great value to them. Because on the physical level, when you reach out your hand to someone who's needy and you have something good for them, they're delighted, and maybe they're surprised, but they're delighted, and they're great. They're usually grateful if they're a normal person. But on spiritual level, if you stretch out yourself to benefit somebody who is spiritually needy, how do you put a value on that? You can, it's priceless.
That is priceless, correct?
She's not afraid of the snow for her household. What does that mean? Why would you be afraid of the snow? Because of your own comfort? You don't want to get cold? Or you don't want to take the risk of slipping and falling on that sidewalk?
You have covering, right? When it snows, it is extremely cold. You can't go out and work. So you have sufficient reserves of oil for your lamps and sufficient blankets and clothing for you to keep you warm. So she is well prepared for a day of adversity.
And trials. I think of trials for this one.
Yeah. You have extra buffer and extra strength preparedness.
Yeah, and it self-explains itself if you go on past what Al questioned, then it says, colon, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She makes herself coverings of tapestry. You know, that's why she wouldn't be afraid of the, like you said, but I think that verse goes on to explain itself.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, very good, yep. So because she has been working at the loom and the spindle, she's done the preparatory work so that when adversity comes, we don't consider it to be an end game, so to speak.
Mhm.
Adversity is not something that we get all excited about because we have all these clothing that she's already made. Her husband is known in the gates.
This is some heavenly realm. There are 24 elders, right, in Book of Revelation.
Yep. So if her husband is Christ,
Mhm.
he's known in the gates, of course, in the gates of heaven.
Mhm.
But she's on the earth. So her husband, Jesus Christ, should be known in whatever gates that she enters into down here. Because she's a representative, she's the emissary. So if we can stretch it a little bit that way too.
Yeah.
Because even if she doesn't preach openly, her character and her behavior and her habits make her known in the gates.
Yeah.
But her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. Now she's back to her entrepreneurial skills again. She makes fine linen.
Those are
And
clothes
sells.
of high priest and priests.
Yes, linen ephod. This material is expensive material. Even today, if you buy a fine linen shirt, even today it's not a cheap shirt. It's an expensive shirt.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things she chooses to make, because she could have made all kinds of things. She makes scarlet. It says over here, her household is clothed with scarlet. Is that kind of a material or is that a color? She makes silk and purple, it says here. But she also makes fine linen. So she's really generating a broad variety of materials, and she sells it and delivers girdles unto the merchant. So she's really working day and night. Is that what the church does? The people of God work day and night to produce something of value that can be used to bring value into the marketplace of ideas,
Hmm.
marketplace of philosophies. And how do you see this spiritually? She makes fine linen and sells it.
All these things are very, very symbolic. The scarlet and silk and purple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tagore, if you look up the word scarlet in Hebrew or Greek, I mean, I said that wrong. What would that mean? Like Al said, does it mean the color or the fabric? I think if you look at the original word, it would show whether it means the color.
I can look it up real quick.
I think it's a red color.
Yeah, scarlet is red, but Al's question was, is that referencing a fabric or a color of the fabric?
It says here it's crimson properly. The insect or its color. Also stuffed dyed with it. Crimson and scarlet.
In the
Hmm.
thread, yeah, that word thread shows that it might be referring to clothing. But I agree with going beyond the meaning, like Tagore said, that, like it's referencing. You can
Yeah,
carry
the
more
colors
further.
all have something to say, like, for example, Rahab put a scarlet thread outside of her window.
Right,
So it had to do with redemption. She was saved from the fall of the wall. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. Is that what the church does? Is the church strong and honorable? That's verse 25. I'm reading it off the interlinear here. Certainly there are those who are strong in the church and have been throughout the centuries. And the gates of hell have not prevailed against the church. And there have been those who were honorable. The 1 Timothy 3 says, if a man desires the office of an overseer, then he should have these qualifications, and these are honorable, right? It would be considered an honorable thing if a person has those qualifications. So yes, there is strength and honor in the church. And her clothing, and she shall rejoice in her clothing in time to come. Oh, strength and honor are her clothing. Okay.
Yeah, let's shift to King James or some.
You want me to go back?
Yeah, these are not in order.
No, it's not exactly in order.
Yeah.
All right, we got verse 25. That was verse 25. So what is this shall rejoice in time to come? Is that what's going to happen? Does the spiritual body rejoice in the age to come? Is he who mourns today going to laugh tomorrow?
That's right. That's very right. She's working hard now, sacrificing present in order to have better future.
And she opens her mouth by telling jokes all the time. No, that's not what it says, Tagore.
You are shooting yourself in the foot.
Sorry. She does not she opens her mouth with wisdom, not the wisdom of this world, the wisdom of God, because she has received it, because she asked for it.
Yeah.
She asked and she knocked and she supplicated.
That's
The
correct.
church has the wisdom of God, as it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 1. And in her tongue is the law of kindness.
In Hebrew, the word kindness means generosity, if that's helps understand it a little better.
Sure. Being kind to someone means, yeah, you're giving them something. Oh, yeah. I find it such a pleasure to be able to be generous from time to time. And I spent a considerable portion of my life not having enough to be able to be generous. And then there was a time when I paid off my mortgage and I had a lot extra and I could be generous to people. And I could do it, anonymously, and I could do it when they made a need known, and it was such a pleasure to do that. And guess what, folks? Now I have a mortgage again. So I've been scaled back again. But here, the church in her tongue is the law of kindness. A kind word. Think about that. Are you skilled at kind words? If you're not, you could be. But I think we all try to be. None of us are trying to be unkind in our words. We might do it inadvertently or out of ignorance. But if there's a law in our hearts, it's being written in our hearts, and it's a law and we go by it because we're lawful by spiritual law. We're continually working to go by the law of kindness and generosity in our tongue. That is the things we say.
Yeah, one caution is, doesn't mean you do smooth talking and flattery. Just genuinely, truthfully kind.
Oh, Tagore, I really like that tie you're wearing today. That's really exceptional.
Yeah. Can I borrow $10 from you? After that.
She looks well to the ways of her household and eats not the bread of idleness. What are the ways of our household? You and I are what is called members of the household of faith.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen that verse? I think it's in
Excellent.
Ephesians.
Yeah.
So we look to the body of believers. We look well to the ways of those who belong to God, those who are among the faithful.
We help each other, not finding opportunities to criticize, but with a positive attitude.
Yes. Looking to edify at every opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
If you can edify someone, strengthen or comfort or come to the aid
Mm-hmm.
of someone. And eats not the bread of idleness. We don't find ourselves being bored. Oh, I'm bored. You ever hear a teenager say that? I'm bored. It's like, what are you talking about? I haven't been bored for 50 years. No idleness.
Mhm.
No. No. What does it mean to be spiritually idle?
We need to increase the talents because if you just bury it, the one is taken away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's investment of time, energy, thought, exercising the gifts that have been given to us individually, and all that comes with that. And you will not be idle if you're exercising it. Her children arise up and call her blessed. Her husband also. And he praises her. Now, this is quite a thing to say because we would have to say that our husband praises us, that our husband to be, the one to whom we are betrothed, as Paul put it, I betrothed you to one. Remember, Paul says that?
Yeah, as a chaste virgin.
Yeah. I betrothed you to one husband.
Even Christ.
So here, her husband praises her.
Mhm.
Does Christ praise the church? I know your works, that you have done this and done that and done the other.
Yeah, you hated Nicolaitans, which I also hate.
Yeah. So all seven churches he says something good about. He tells them, hey, let me praise you on this point here.
Mhm.
Let me remind you that I recognize the good, and I can see it, and I'm not unaware. You think that you can take this personally as an individual?
Yeah, these all verses work at an individual level, micro, and as well as collective.
So when your husband to be looks at you, or let's just say your husband Christ looks at you, there's things he sees that he praises about you. If he spoke to you one-on-one, he would say, I want to praise you for this. Now, does that make you feel awkward or unworthy or in some way that it would be inappropriate? He says here he praises his church. Go ahead, Tagore.
Why do you say that? Like,
Because we don't normally think of ourselves as being praised by Christ.
okay.
It's usually the other way around. We're supposed to praise him.
Yeah, it's a two-way, right? Two-way communication under new covenantal binding.
Yeah, but it's almost heresy to some people.
Yeah, that's the old school.
Maybe it would be a heretical statement in some circles.
Yeah, that's the old school because they don't study scriptures. All the things that she's doing that they are not doing. So far, verse 27.
So all her children arise up and call her blessed.
Yeah, this is a loaded verse. We can come back to it when we talk about New Jerusalem.
Many daughters have done virtuously.
Bye, Rita. Thanks for coming. No worries. If you're sleepy, you can leave.
Thank you so much. I really enjoy these studies. I'd like to hook up again and listen to it, but I don't know how. So can somebody send me a link?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Next time, remind me. I'll
Okay.
give you a link.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Good night,
It's all right,
everyone.
Rita. Have
Thanks
a good
again.
night.
Good night,
You too.
Rita.
Good night. Thank you.
See, here is the catch. This is an interesting verse. She is mother of Christ, and then she is bride of Christ, and then she is wife of Christ, and now she is also daughter. These are impossibilities in flesh, realm of flesh.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the symbology runs in different directions.
Correct. Correct.
Many daughters have done virtuously, but you have excelled them all. So this is like the quintessential virtuous woman.
Mhm.
This body of believers, or this spiritual temple, if I can put it that way, is the best of the best.
Yeah.
It's the one who is espoused to a husband. It's the one who is married to Christ. Christ is going to marry one who excels them all.
Mhm.
That really makes high standards for us as we read through this. When we think about it.
What did you say? Can you repeat that?
I said, as we're reading through this, it's giving us a high standard, an excellent goal, a high goal. Become perfect, become holy. You know, all we need to be high achievers.
Yeah, it's a comparative statement also. Many daughters are compared to, but she is excellent, exceeded them all. That's a strange verse. Who is he comparing her with? That brings us back to Isaiah. You have queen, and then you have her maidens. Queen of Ophir.
Okay. Excellus them all puts her in the primary position of
Mhm.
Being the most acceptable,
Mhm.
most favored. You know, as we talked about Mary earlier, blessed art thou among all the women, it said.
Yeah.
You know, blessed art thou among women means you are more favored above all the other women.
Mhm.
Favor is deceitful. Oh, yeah. Yeah, people play mind games with that, with favor. Hey, let me do you a favor and then you owe me one. That's like, that's what the mafia does.
Can you check the word favor? I believe it is saying about physical beauty. Grace is deceitful and beauty is vain.
Favor. That's 3130. Let's see here.
Yeah.
2580. It just says grace, charm.
Yeah. It's more in terms of charm. So you're a charming person and you're physically in flesh, very beautiful and attractive.
Yeah.
That's the direction it goes. Okay, anyway, let's back to Proverbs 31:30.
So favor is deceitful, charm is deceitful.
Yeah, beauty is vain. That actually fits. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. And you can substitute that with Hollywood.
Mm.
Yeah. And every woman who is exceptionally beautiful can use that power to manipulate people.
Mhm.
And then until she ends up in a very bad pickle and she can't get out of it.
Mhm.
It usually leads you down a path where you're going to pay the piper eventually.
Did we
But this
miss
is one of
any
the things
verse?
that happens to men throughout biblical history, such as when Solomon had hundreds of wives. It's because these beautiful women that came from faraway lands were able to be charming to him and able to use their beauty to make their way into his harem.
Well, think of the story of Samson.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And then at the end of the book of Numbers, after the incident with Balaam and Balak, the Moabite women came and seduced Israelite men to eat things sacrificed to idols. And then that's when Phineas, remember old Phineas, that guy?
Yeah.
He came and he used a javelin to stop the plague because of what happened. So this whole thing about the appeal of beauty, where it says beauty is vain.
There is
Of course,
sorry.
beautiful men and women have a very limited time span. They eventually, you eventually grow old and you're not going to be able to flaunt that anymore. And it no longer holds its charm. So yeah, it's vain.
There's a parallel verse to this in Proverbs. The very charming and beautiful woman who lacks discretion or who lacks fear of God is like, she's like a small golden ring in the nose of a snout as a pig.
Oh yeah.
The whole external flesh beauty is like a small ring. And inside your big body, if you lack fear of God, you are like a pig. So pig is decorated with small nose ring. It's like your flesh external beauty. See, God describes things as they are spiritually. The whole value of the external beauty is this much, so small compared to the whole body of pig that you are if you lack fear of God. So that comes back to it.
Yeah, because it's temporal. When you talk about charm or beauty, they're so temporary.
Yeah.
It's just going to pass away. And then what do you have? If you don't have the fear of the Lord to follow up on that, I mean, it's fine to be beautiful and it's fine to be charming as long as it's combined with the fear of the Lord.
Exactly.
Such as what we saw with Esther when she was selected to be a queen.
And there are lots of other studies I also did. The person who is not, a woman who is not physically attractive, physically not charming, physically not beautiful at all, you might call her whatever derogatory names. But once she changes her character, improves that, she actually looks beautiful. there is some attraction, some radiance comes. It's whole different spiritual dynamics God has put in motion.
Hmm. Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah, there are studies and
I guess because her whole countenance would change because now she lives a life filled with hope, and she's beautiful on the inside because of her faith.
yeah, in her mouth is a law of kindness, and she extends her hand to the poor.
Yeah.
What a beautiful woman she is.
So it's contrasting this this beauty and this charm
Yeah,
with a woman that fears the Lord, and because she shall be praised,
yeah,
and she'll especially be praised by her husband,
correct.
which you see there in verse 28.
And in the congregation also, her children also would praise her.
Yes.
This is deceitful in two ways. The physical beauty, deceitful to the person who is beautiful, and the deceitful to others who are chasing her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you both end up disappointed later. It's like, wow, how many men have actually married beautiful women on the outside, but they regretted it because they were ugly on the inside?
Exactly, honey, I don't like you, love you anymore.
All right, we're in the last verse here.
The other thing I always think about is when I look around, when you're in the stores or out in public, a lot of people or more people don't look so good. And the ones who don't, it's not because of anything they did. And the ones who look beautiful, it's not because of anything they did. To a certain extent, I mean, exercise and different things can improve and keeping your weight off. But you see people who their looks aren't even based on any of that, and where you can see that nothing they can do can change their looks, that it's just the way their body is formed is unusual. You know what I mean? And it's not to your glory. You know, to be beautiful is not to your glory.
Something you're pretty much born with a certain look, huh? Is that what you're trying to say?
Right, you really are. Well, I see a lot of people on the street who, you know, it's a look they're born with. It's not something that they created or could have changed. There's a lot of looks come from birth. You know, even setting aside even deformities, of course, you know, if they have no legs or arms or things like that, but a lot of people, I don't know, just when I look at them, I know there was nothing they could have done to change where they're at.
So a person can just say, yes, I'm strikingly beautiful, but it's not my fault.
Have you heard anyone
It
ever
must be
saying
hard to
that?
be, it must be hard to be truly beautiful. Because, well, you see it, I think they get portrayed in the movie business and everything, you get used, and they don't seem happier for sure.
Well,
So
there's also a beauty that comes out when your husband praises you. And there's a beauty that comes out knowing God loves you and sees good in you,
right.
and knowing that you're his. That's another way that beauty is brought out.
Yeah, and I sense that too. But I just don't give credit to people for their looks. Because you can only to a certain extent affect things that way, mostly with weight, but you know, It's just the way they were born, like Pam said. And then it
Yeah, so
goes
just-
on to what Marlene said.
Yeah, so just look people in the eye and say, look, it's not my fault. I was born this way.
I like to say I can't change my outward appearance, but I can certainly change my inward appearance.
There you go.
Actually, you can't do that either. Only God can do that.
Right. That's right.
Yeah,
We
God,
can try and get frustrated.
God has, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to move on to the last verse. You go ahead.
Now, God has designed such a way the inner beauty overrides, supersedes outer beauty in the long-term relationships. Temporarily, first time, probably the physical takes over, but the long run, it overrides.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to college, someone commented to me, why do you hang out with the, I'm trying to think of the word he used, maybe I'll just say handicapped or not so appealing in different ways or whatever. And I thought about it and thought about it. And then I came back with an answer later. And I said, well, you hang out with the people that look good on the outside for show. I hang out with people that are nice on the inside. I don't care if they don't look so good. You know, I had a couple friends that were blind, you know, different things in certain ways, but I was attracted to who they were as a person, not the package they were delivered in. So that reminds me of that person's comment when you said that.
That's a good one. Very good response to them if they ever understand what you told them.
Right, you know, I like my friends better than your friends, I told them, because it was for show. But like you said, if the person perceived it or not, I don't know, but at least I could explain. He didn't want to hang out with the people I did, and I thought, well, that was his loss. They're nice people. And sometimes if they're not so worried about vanity, they spend more time on who they are inside.
Probably it takes many, many years to actually understand these truths of inner beauty and really downgrade externals. It takes lots of maturity, lots of understanding and wisdom and conviction.
Yeah. Yeah. The last verse here is 31. This is none other than Proverbs 31:31. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. So she is supposed to receive of the fruit of her own hands. At least some of the fruit she's producing comes back to her. Not all of it goes forward out to others. But let her give her of the fruit of her own hands. Have you ever thought about that in your own life? Sometimes, whatever good your life generates, it tends to cause a boomerang effect where a blessing comes back on you. Whatever you were involved in, whether it was just going to visit someone who's lonely, someone who's shut in, or whether it was painting someone's fence because they're not able to do it, or if it was because you had kind words and knew how to encourage and strengthen those who were down and out. Do you ever notice how, no matter what it is, no matter what activity that you are involved in that was producing good fruit, that a certain portion of that came back into your life? It caused your life to be better and richer, and it caused your life to receive a blessing also. You can't give and give without somehow a natural action of some good coming back to you. That makes sense?
The word in here that stands out to me is let her own works praise her in the gates. The scripture that says we have to work out our own salvation really makes me understand, and as I get older, that we're the only one responsible for our personal salvation, our own submission and receiving of asking for the Holy Spirit and repenting. Each one has to do it. It's not a group effort. Some people say, I go to that church, we're all saved. And I think this concept here, it's very individual for the person. It's interesting concept.
Yeah, but Pam, what I was getting at is kind of like what you do for your work. You know, you help people to get healthy. You
Yes.
counsel people on how to adjust their food, how to adjust their nutrition.
Yeah.
And you see results over time. And you see some people actually turn around and
Yeah.
in their self-care, they're able to actually reverse the trend that they were stranded and like imprisoned by.
Yep.
And so the fruit of that, some of that comes back on you in your satisfaction and your ability to be satisfied that you did something for a person that actually changed their life and caused them to reap huge benefits.
It is rewarding for sure.
So give her of the fruit of her hands. Now I wonder how much the apostles that went out and those in local first century assemblies, you wonder how much satisfaction and how much of the fruit of their work came back on them. Sometimes when you read the apostles' writings, Paul especially, he'll really compliment and just, what we would maybe consider flattery, but what he's doing is he's giving them recognition for their faithfulness. Let her works praise her in the gates. So if somebody is praising one of our brethren for something, we should not quench that, but we should let their works praise them in the gates. Apparently, it's not wrong, is it, to praise somebody in the gates? Because if it was, there's a wrong way to praise someone, yes. There is a wrong way to do it. It's wrong to be excessive in doing it. It's wrong to be over the top. Or it's wrong to do it insincerely, without the purity of sincerity. But if it's done sincerely and with measure, according to this, there's nothing wrong with praising another individual who's done well, who served well, who gave and who was kind and who was willing to extend themselves. And does that seem odd to you?
I was just talking to someone about that today. where when I would compliment her, said something positive, she'd brush it off, wouldn't receive it, you know. And I think, and I talked to her about it. I said, yep, if you do something good, you should feel good that you did something good. Oh, I'd explain that to her. Yes, you get to feel good when you do something good.
Yeah.
Take compliments, you know, and feel good when you receive a compliment. Don't try and not accept it. They're meant to edify
Yeah.
us, to encourage us, to build us up.
Yeah, as long as we understand that the source of that goodness that you're complimenting is, of course, it wasn't because I'm a great guy. It's not because I came up with that.
That's right. Yeah.
But it's because God gave me the privilege to have that.
Yep.
So if someone is praised for using or for laboring in what field God gave them to labor in, and they've produced good in that field,
Mhm.
recognition is not wrong.
That's right. That's
To recognize and to praise their accomplishment is good, as long as God gets the glory.
Yeah, I think more people need to step into that. We need to express appreciation more, and people need to receive it more so they can be. I was telling the person that when Messiah was baptized, his father told him he was pleased with him.
Mhm.
And he probably had a smile on his face. He didn't say to his father, no, I'm not. You know,
No.
he probably just was grateful and accepted the compliment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Pam. We have not done well in encouraging one another. We don't come from a culture of encouragement and a culture of blessing and strengthening one another. We come from a culture, our church culture is more one of criticism.
That's
At least that's been my experience.
no,
Or kind of like fault finding or critiquing, looking for little things that we don't agree with or something
overly
like that.
critical comes up quite a bit, that I have to pray for people.
Yeah. And I'm talking about self-criticism as well, you know.
Right. Yep.
So if that's where 80% of your focus is on always looking to where you did something wrong, I would say that is unhealthy.
That's right.
Let me continually examine myself so that I can really focus in on how wrong I am all the time. You know, if I have a view of myself like that, where I'm continually looking for the wrong, well, I don't think that's what our Father does.
Oh no, no. He says he looks for the good report.
I mean, we have to recognize that we are wrong. Yeah.
When people walk around constantly saying, I'm a sinner, I'm a terrible sinner, we're all sinners, and I go, okay, that needs to stop, because then you're just inviting problems and you're opening the door. You can't be claiming that. A lot of people want to stay in that demoralized state, and I say, no, you need to accept that once you repent and are baptized, you're called a saint, not a sinner. I get that dialogue quite a bit. I don't know where that whole philosophy comes from, you know, what group started that, but definitely we shouldn't, after baptism, walk around claiming that we're terrible sinners. We should.
Well, if the person is unrepentant, then maybe you should just agree with them.
But this is after baptism, after all of that, we have to release that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see that too much. So I talk about to people when I see it. I say we
Yes.
were sinners. We're not are sinners.
Yeah. The whole thing about self-demeaning and self-devaluing and all that's all demonic.
It is. Yep. It is.
Because Satan loves you to hate yourself.
Yep.
Because it gives him inroads to cause depression and to cause a state of mental weakness where you feel like you don't even want to approach the throne because you're not worthy to even approach the throne for help in time of need.
Right.
Okay.
And
It shuts you down. It really does shut you down spiritually.
Yep.
If you're
It causes a
self-demeaning.
lot of sickness for sure.